Hello. Here we are again, Saturday Night Live, and talking about Mandukya Upanishad. And we are once again with our friend Swami Rama and his discussion entitled Enlightenment Without God. Not anti-God, but awareness of our own levels of consciousness. And we are on verse or sutra 9 out of 12. And to get us oriented to that, I will just briefly read us through the verse itself of the ones leading up to number 9. A little bit of a slow start here. So 1, Hari Om, the entire universe, Hari Om. Who said what?
Hari Om.
I said Hari Om, Rojo said Hari Om.
Isn't that what you're supposed to say?
Hari Om, the entire universe is the syllable Om. That's pretty big, isn't it? The following is the exposition of Om. Everything in the past, present, and future is verily Om. That which is beyond time, space, and causation is also Om. Wow.
It's all Om.
2. Hi, Johnny. 2. All this whatsoever is seen, here, there, and everywhere, even the Roho, is Brahman. This very self, Atman, is Brahman, the absolute reality. This Atman has 4 aspects. Number 3, the first aspect is the waking state, Vaishvanar. In this state, consciousness is turned to the external. With its 7 instruments and 19 channels, it experiences the gross phenomenal world.
Like this.
Like this gross phenomenal world out here, yes. Number 4. Hi, Jeff. Number 4, the second aspect is the dreaming state, Tejasa. In this state, consciousness is turned inward. It also has 7 instruments and 19 channels, which experience the subtle mental impressions. Food for thought, huh? Number 5, the third aspect is deep sleep, prajna. In this state, there is neither desire nor dream. In deep sleep, all experiences merge into the unity of undifferentiated consciousness. The sleeper is filled with bliss and experiences bliss, and can find the way to knowledge of the 2 preceding states. Now we're getting somewhere, yes.
You need a bigger pillow for that state.
Number 6, the experiencer of these states of consciousness is the Lord of all. This one is all-knowing. This one directs everything from within. This one is the womb of all. All things originate from and dissolve into this. Comes from this and goes back to this. 7, Turiya is the 4th state. In this state, consciousness is not turned inward, nor outward, nor both. It is undifferentiated. It is beyond the spheres of cognition and non-cognition. This state cannot be experienced through the senses or known by comparison or inference. It is incomprehensible, unthinkable, and indescribable.
But you know it when you're there.
This is pure consciousness. This is the real self, capital S self. It is the cessation of all phenomena. It is tranquil, all blissful, and one without a second.
One.
Without a second. This real self is to be realized. It's getting pretty rich, isn't it? Number 8, pure consciousness, which has been described as having 4 states, it's already been described, we went through that, is indivisible. It is Om. The sounds A, U, M, and the letters A, U, M are the 3 states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping. And these 3 states are the 3 sounds and letters. But the 4th state, which is unknown and hidden, is realized only in silence. Which brings us to number 9. The consciousness experienced during the waking state is A, the A, the first letter of Om. It pervades all other sounds. Without the first syllable A, or A, one cannot utter the word Om. And likewise, without knowing the waking state, one cannot know the other states of consciousness. One who is aware of this reality fulfills all his desires and is successful. This is where we are. Pretty cool, huh? So it walks us through everything is Om. It's one unity. Then it tells us about those 4 levels, and then it turns around and starts walking us through it again to say that the letters, the 4 letters, the 3 letters plus the silence, are actually one and the same with that. Swami Rama guides us. The first phoneme A is of the same nature as the waking state, which is Vaishnavar. It is the all-pervading simple vowel. All sounds are pervaded by A. The first letter of Om is also compared with the manifest universe because one is aware of the phenomenal world through the conscious waking state. Now, I'll add here the observation that we literally, in our contemplations, can imagine or ponder about this. So it can be, now it doesn't mean it's easy. We got to hang out with this stuff a very long time. But if you just simply allow yourself to go, just the part of the Om, just for yourself, and allow that to be a symbol of And in that that simple I attempt to be aware of everything that is me and my physical body. And I attempt to be aware at the same time of everything that is in this room and this space that's around me here. So it's me plus all of you and all of this. And then I attempt to allow the to be representative, difficult, but we can do this, representative of me as his physical me, all of everything and everyone that's in this room, as well as the totality of this ashram and the totality of the city and the country and the planet that we are sitting in. All of that. And then I expanded a little bit more to be aware of me as a physical body, everything in this room, everything that's in the ashram, everything that's in the city, everything that's in the country, everything that's in the planet, everything that's in the solar system, and as best we can stretch to do this, the entire Milky Way galaxy and the entire known universe. Beyond that, if you can do it, multiverse, if there is. And so you just, you allow that burst to come up, and as best we can contemplate on, be aware of that really huge totality. That's the There's the the u, and the Not easy to do, is it? But it gives us something. It gives us something that we can play with of what's being suggested here.
It was funny when the awareness sort of stretched.
You just did it, yeah.
And at some point, the mind just gave up.
At some point, the mind gave up, yes.
And then it just, really quiet.
That's the end of the capacity of those instrument channels that operate in Vaishnavar. Said in the beginning, those instrumentations, most important of which is manas, chitta, ahamkara, and buddhi, and the indriyas, which is only 14 of them, is those things, awareness only operate in Vaishnavar, which is what we're playing with the and they operate in Tejasa. They don't operate in Prajna, and they don't operate in Turiya, because they're beyond all of that. So what we just did, what you just described with the and then the cognitive dissonance comes, and the mind just loses its capacity to go beyond, and then what happens is what you just described. Something sort of falls away. And there's a glimpse of something beyond. So there's something to that silly little idea that I just gave you.
From my mind, at the same time, that's expanding in the big, but also expanding the
infinitesimally small. Well, that's because it's everything.
And at a certain point, it comes together with the expanding big.
Yeah, and it's the attempt. It's the attempt to get our instrumentation of totality of antakarna. It's the attempt to get that to be able to grasp the totality of Vaishnavar. Not easy to do.
It's amazing what 4 cubic centimeters of brain matter can perceive.
Yes, well, and what's amazing about that to me, Johnny, is that the yogis and many of the modern scientists do not agree with one another on this. Because many of the modern scientists, I'll tell you a little story to go with this, many of them believe that consciousness only emerges out of dead matter. It is dead matter that has somehow magically evolved and turned into consciousness. The yogis say no, that primary in existence is consciousness, and that consciousness manifests out as this universe. Many of these modern intellectuals say, no, there is no such thing as life. There is no such thing as consciousness. There is no such thing as prana. Don't waste your time looking for it. This is what a lot of modern science does. Around 1970, Swami Rama submitted, I'm not being a guru salesman, he submitted himself as a research subject to the Menninger Foundation in Kansas in the USA. And one of the experiments he was laying on his back demonstrating consciousness and deep sleep. They had him hooked up to brain waves. And this man was dead asleep. He was laying on the table snoring. Brainwave measuring equipment said, no, gone. The brain waves are such that the dude is gone. And yet when he woke up, he recited back to them the conversation that they were having while he was gone asleep. Well, to the scientists, this was impossible.
Wasn't it also said that he, in fact, said things about things happening in the other room as well? Something like that?
Who cares? That's not the point that I'm trying to get to, is this point. They said to him, how did you do that? Now, my observation that the spirit of how did you do that was not truly a scientific inquiry. It was more like if you watch a stage magician, I've done this, watch a stage magician do a trick and play a trick on your mind. What is the natural question that every one of us will ask the magician? How did you do that? And so they naturally asked him, but they didn't really want an answer because they knew that what had just happened was impossible. Why was it impossible? Because they already had closed minds. They already had the solution. There's no such thing. You cannot do this.
They knew it wasn't possible.
They absolutely knew this was not possible. So they completely tuned out the answer he gave them. They said, how did you do this? He gave them a very simple explanation. My brain was asleep. I was awake.
They didn't want to try out for themselves.
They didn't want to try out for themselves and were unable to say, possibly this man knows something we don't. Possibly we should take another look at our science, because somewhere around the 1700s, in terms of years, science had made the decision there's no such thing. At that time, according to one scientist who writes about this, it was at that time known in English as vital energy. There was the concept of vital energy. Vitalism. And science made the decision that there's no such thing as vitalism. There is no such thing as vital energy. There is no such thing as Shakti or Prana or Ki or Chi, which is known in the martial arts. It just doesn't exist. So that had been, nearly 300 years before. So every one of the scientists goes to science school and they learn the latest science. It doesn't exist. So when they see something that's impossible, what do? Naturally say, how did you do this? But they cannot hear the answer. I'm not saying that. I can't convince anybody of that. Nobody can convince anybody of that. Swami Rama said that when he came to the West, it was his idea too, I think. I can't prove it. But his master said, go to the scientists, demonstrate to the scientific community whatever you are capable of demonstrating. And shortly after he did this stuff with Menninger, he stopped doing these kinds of demonstrations for the simple reason that nobody wanted to say, how is this possible? Because they had already concluded that it was not possible. So what do? It's just a story. And I'm saying that again in response to Johnny saying, isn't it amazing what 4 cubic centimeters of brain matter can perceive? I'm not going to pick a fight with you, and I'm not going to argue the point, Johnny, but I think that the fundamental premise is inaccurate.
And the material scientists look for repeatability, and he was probably at that time the only person who could do it.
There's not many around.
And then okay, it's one.
So therefore it's not possible. I find it astounding personally that the text we're looking at here is about levels of consciousness, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Every one of us know that we're already doing that. But yet the Om symbol is, across the world we live in, considered to be a symbol of a religion. Think of the absurdity of that. Now, I would never personally be willing to sit on a panel having a debate with a scientist over this, because the minds are so closed. In effect, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep are a religion in that view. Deep sleep is a religion. The world has agreed upon this. The Om symbol is not a symbol of consciousness, which is not possible. It's the symbol of a religion called Hinduism. Think about how absolutely absurd it is. Now, I know I get a little passionate about it, a little excited, but this is the world we live in. When the knowledge of when the knowledge of the phenomenal world is revealed through contemplation and meditation, but, one becomes capable of attaining one's desired objects and becomes an aptakama, one whose desires are all fulfilled. Now, we're just taking this is just an explanation giving. I can add a few little stories like that and comments about experience, but we're all stuck with, I think we're stuck with the fact that we in this conversation, nor I as being the one who pushed the button on the computer to do this thing and transmit it out through our ashram satsang page, I cannot prove any of this. The only way that anybody can prove it to himself, herself, is to do the practices themselves and say, wow, maybe these yogis knew something that I don't know. Maybe they are right. Maybe there's something to this. Maybe there is something or someone or some essence, consciousness, that exists in and permeates through Vaishnavar, Tejasa, and Prajna, which is the places where you and I do Jagrat, Swapnu, and Sushupti, which is the waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Maybe there's something to it. Through deep contemplation and meditation, a student becomes aware of the unity of the life force, prana, permeating the diversity of the universe. And if we don't do the practices, we will not have that awareness. And if we do have that awarenesses, most of the people around us are going to say we're crazy, we're lying, we're talking about a religious belief. We believe in a god called prana or some silliness like that. The aspirant, instead of perceiving different names and forms, which is what we see in the world, experiences the life force alone. But there is no life force, says the scientist, which is one of the aspects of the manifestation of consciousness. Manifestation of consciousness. Now, who the hell is this man, Swami Rama, writing this book years ago? What makes him think he knows what he's talking about? One could argue. Well, if you want to double check whether he's telling the truth, the only way to do it is to do what's being suggested here, to do the contemplation and meditation. And then we come to see for ourselves. Others would say, then you come to be brainwashed with your dead centimeters of gray matter. And isn't that so? That's why it's a religion, so we'll say, because now you've become brainwashed and you've become convinced of the truth of this philosophy when we've all concluded that it's crazy. There was a thing, you can Google this and find out about it. It was in 1994. There was a man at a conference, at some sort of scientific conference, that was giving a lecture. And he was talking about the nature of modern science. And he explained something along the lines of, we, the scientific community, have figured out a lot. We have learned a lot with our science. And he was not saying he knew exactly where he was going, but he said, but what we have figured out is actually the easy problems. We have found solution to the easy problems of science. As complex as the scientific research was at the time, he said, this is actually the easy science. He said, but there is a hard problem in science that we don't know the answer to yet. And he was basically saying, and we all agree, we don't have the answer to this hard problem. And the hard problem he mentioned was consciousness, that we, the scientists, we cannot figure out the source of consciousness. Well, what happened was after apparently he was not trying to create a new terminology. It was by accident. He just in his speech, in his presentation, he used the phrase hard problem. Well, the phrase hard problem caught on. And so it became known as the hard problem of consciousness. Consciousness is the hard problem because nobody could come up with a solution for it. And so it became a buzzword. So now you can Google. I haven't done it recently. Maybe it's been a year or so ago that I Googled the term, but you can find some conversation out there. And one of the things that I've read about this is that if you are working in the scientific community and you mention the phrase hard problem of consciousness, you will be shunned. You will be ostracized by the community. I've read that this is the case. So now it's gotten to the point where you just about dare not even talk about it. It's just an unknown. We just can't talk about it. We just have not figured out yet how those centimeters of dead matter called brain somehow are creating consciousness. But we know it's so.
And a little bit of research that I've just seen, all the scientists attack it from the point of matter first.
They start attacking
matter.
Yeah. Now there's not far we can go with this in this conversation. We can make note of it.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to argue the point because I am not skilled enough to argue the point, and I don't frankly think that any yogi is skilled enough to argue the point, because it is not subject that something probably that can be resolved by debate, which is basically what we just read Swami Rama say here in his discussion on this. And so we can look at this in passing, and maybe somehow in our conversations about this, there is a little bit of potential understanding and inspiration or motivation to do the meditation and contemplation, to check it out for ourselves and find out. Swami Rama goes on. To be successful in the world of objects, one should learn to cultivate the full use of one's conscious mind. Listen to this. Though the conscious part of the mind is a small part of the mind, it functions during the waking state. It's a small part. During this time, the mind employs the senses to contact the phenomenal world. All sense impressions are received during this state. The knowledge of the external world is also important, and if this knowledge is acquired, then it inspires one to seek another level of knowledge. It may inspire some of us to seek another level of knowledge, but not everybody. The external world is the world of means, and one who knows how to utilize the conscious mind and apply it to acquire some worldly object is successful. We all kind of know this, don't we? If you can use that aspect and go get a degree and learn how to run a business, you can now become, we used to talk about, when I was young, we used to talk about millionaires. Now we talk about billionaires. The people running the U.S. government are all billionaires. And this is what's important in our world. The idea here is how to make the best use of the conscious mind so that external amenities are successfully acquired and the necessities of daily life are met. Useful. The world of phenomena should also be understood and dealt with. It's part of Vaishnava. Though one may know that the waking state does not give comprehensive knowledge of the other dimensions of life, although one may know that, it is important to understand, utilize, and direct the conscious part of mind that functions during the waking state. Without this, one cannot successfully maintain relationships or have the means for attaining worldly goals. I think we all know this too. One of the sort of boo-boos or traps that very commonly people run into when we decide we're going to lead a spiritual life, suddenly it becomes very difficult to figure out how to live in this external world. It just becomes a tremendous, tremendous challenge. So the suggestion here is we need to learn how to live with our conscious mind in the waking state out here in the plane of reality called Vaishnava. There are two views of how to utilize the objects of the world, says Swami Rama. One view is to make all the objects of the world means for attaining the highest state of consciousness, and the other is to understand the phenomenal world and make a use of it in a way that it does not create a barrier for the aspirant. Now, this holds in it some presumptions that you're looking for more. If you're not looking for more, then those two are not relevant. In the first case, time, energy, and skill that are utilized in having the necessary means for maintaining a healthy body and environment seem to be important, he's suggesting. But more important from the standpoint of sadhana practices is to know how to live skillfully so that the charms, temptations, and attractions of the world do not create obstacles in the path of enlightenment. That's presuming you're on the path of enlightenment. If we ruled out enlightenment because there is no consciousness, then who's going to waste their time doing any of this? After gaining knowledge of the phenomenal world, the aspirant knows that everything in the external world is subject to change. We learned that for ourselves. On some level, the objects of the world have value and are apparently real, but in actuality, they do not exist as they are. And we have to figure that out for ourselves. Others can explain it to us, which is what we're looking at here, but it's not based on blind faith belief. They don't exist. You said the world is unreal. Well, Guruji so-and-so says the world is unreal, therefore it's true. And that's not it. You check it out yourself. You do this and you come to these insights, which is what he just saying. Their form changes, and therefore their names change, and their qualities also change. When an aspirant adjusts himself to this realization of the change, he practices sadhana by understanding the apparent reality and does not become attached to the phenomenal world or waste his time and energy in acquiring more worldly objects than the bare necessities. All the rest of that is a waste of time. We had some nice food for dinner tonight. We had some beans and some veggies and some rice. These are necessities. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with having, good friendship. Nothing wrong with having some good food together. These are necessities. This is the proper use, proper according to who, what? To have only the bare necessities of life can become a means on the path of enlightenment. The second view, Swami Rama says, the second view for utilizing the objects of the world is to use them as means so that they do not create barriers on the path of unfoldment. Less importance is given to the external world, and no attachment is allowed to be strengthened toward the objects of the world. Enjoy, yes, but no attachments. A rule we give to ourselves, not a rule of a religion. In both cases, attachment is considered to be the main barrier. When the aspirant adjusts himself to the external environment of the transitory world, then he knows the way of utilizing and approaching all the means of the world as a part of his sadhana for attaining his goal, which is turiya, that fourth state. He can use all the means without establishing ownership over the objects of the world. Without cultivating this attitude, it becomes impossible for him to be non-attached and thus to have control over the sense gratifications. The external world is the world of pleasures and pains, the pair of opposites. From where arises pleasure, also arises pain. The aspirant desires to attain a state of freedom from the pairs of opposites and so examines the phenomenal world. but he does not find himself fulfilled by this external world. Therefore, he intensifies his search toward other dimensions of consciousness. Therefore, he intensified his search toward other dimensions of consciousness. The conscious state of mind, if skillfully utilized during the waking state, fulfills one's desires in the external world. Those who know how to direct their energy to be successful in the external world know how to direct the conscious mind and make the best use of the waking state. After collecting data from various quarters, after collecting data from various quarters, it is evident that ordinary people are not as satisfied and happy as they appear. Big surprise, huh? Though they have more than they need, yet they are afraid of the unknown, and they do not know how to go beyond the mire of delusion created by the pairs of opposites. The highest of joys that human beings can acquire during the waking state is sexual union, in which the partners receive a glimpse of joy. But that joy is only brief and partial. For want of the expansion of this joy, human beings work hard and gather together all sorts of means, but none of these helps them to attain the state of freedom, which is perennial happiness. Those who are awakened search for this perennial happiness and explore other states of consciousness. Those who are awakened do that. Those who are not, what do? They certainly don't do that. One who knows how to make use of the waking state skillfully can have success in the phenomenal world, but this success does not enlighten anyone. There are people who are not aware enough to feel the necessity to explore other dimensions of consciousness. They want to have shortcuts for attaining happiness, but they do not have the inner ability, and so they do not comprehend the higher levels of consciousness. Such people look for many ways to escape and are not successful in the world. Either they become fanatic or they join a cult, which is unhealthy and is considered to be religious sickness. The best of people are those fortunate few who literally renounce the world and devote their time and energy to explore the higher dimensions of consciousness. Such people are rare and are worthy of reverence. It has already been explained that the path of renunciation and the path of action are both fruitful and useful for enlightenment. Non-attachment and constant awareness are two requisites in both paths. Non-attachment and constant awareness. It is a fact that the path of action is more time-consuming than the path of renunciation. In the path of action, one directs his energy to acquire means, and in the path of renunciation, one has ample time to devote one's energy to the attainment of his goal. Those who are on the path of action suffer if they do not perform their duties skillfully and selflessly. Thus, they become victims of their own deeds and actions. Likewise, those renunciates who have not renounced the lustful attitude toward the objects of the world also suffer. Therefore, it is not the path, but it is the attitude that one builds for treading one of the paths with full sincerity. Note that again. It is not the path, but the attitude that is important.
Non-attachment, constant awareness.
Non-attachment,
Attitude.
constant awareness. Yes,
And
either way.
attitude.
Yes, yes. Bill, treading the path with full sincerity, devotion, and perseverance. There are some renunciates who renounce the objects of the cares and pleasures of the world with full sincerity, but then they do not persistently practice the sadhana. Their minds deepen the grooves of inert habits, and thus they become the victims of sloth and inertia. Oops. Oops. Off and on in human life, there comes an occasion when one receives a glimpse of the transitory and apparent reality of this universe. Listen to this. If such opportunities are utilized by practicing non-attachment during those moments, one will surely attain his goal. The real tip in there, isn't there? This awakening comes in every human mind. There is nothing in the world, no relationship, no object that can fulfill the human desire to have everlasting peace, bliss, and happiness. There is nothing in the world, no relationship, no object that can fulfill the human desire to have everlasting peace, bliss, and happiness. The moments of awakening make everyone aware of the truth. But for lack of practice, constant awareness towards truth remains absent. The constant awareness is not there. Thus, human beings suffer on account of their self-created miseries. Everybody gets the glimpses, but then we have our own self-created miseries because we don't do anything. Often we don't do anything with those little moments of glimpse. In this verse, the waking state is explained as being compared with the world of phenomena, which is related to the first letter of Om, which is the A. But to know the comprehensive meaning of Om, one should learn the other aspects of consciousness related to the U and the M, and finally to the hidden state of Om, the supreme state of silence. And that brings us to the end of our section. And next is the cliffhanger towards U. So what's happening here is the yogis are carrying us through. Now we've talked about the levels of consciousness earlier on. Then we just talked about the A. Next we're going to talk about the U. Then we're going to talk about the M. And then it's going to come back and talk about the silence. Isn't this absolutely astounding journey? Just to sit here and go through this together in this kind of a way. It's incredible, isn't it? So anyway, let's pause there, huh? Okay.
There's a lot to this A.
Huh?
There is a lot to this A.
There's a lot to it, isn't there? Yes. So we'll pause there now, okay? I hope this was fun.
Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live. All righty, thank you for playing. We'll come together tomorrow morning and have a nice chat. What was the name of that?
Tangible and intangible.
We're going to talk about the tangible and the intangible. Ooh, pretty exciting. Just two words that came up. Did I talk about that? Where did I talk about that? Oh, I talked about that in the new course.
New course?
New course, yes.
Is there a new course?
There is, yes.
Wow.
Plug. Take a look at it.
Bling, bling, bling.
It's called Transitioning to the Yoga of the Ancient Sages.
Cool.
We hope so.
Sounds
We
really awesome.
Yeah, we hope so. You can be the assessor of that.
Okay.
We had fun putting it together, though. Indeed, we did. So thank you for spending a little bit of Saturday night together. Where's Joe Moreau? So we don't have, and Daniel, We don't have anybody with us tonight that's already in tomorrow. Or do we? Do we have any? Dutchies are in tomorrow. Do we have any Dutchies?
Not in
We don't even have any Dutchies. And where's Hashim?
45.
He was not here.
Hashim is not up tonight, sleeping in tonight. Or
He's left the waking state. So he
he's
doesn't want to
left
talk
the
about
waking state. So yeah, he said, I don't want to talk about waking
it.
state.
I want to be in Tejasa or deep sleep.
Yeah, I'm going to be in Tejasa or Prajna. Check with you people. Alrighty, anyway, thanks again for playing. Wonder if the snow's going to stop here for us. There, the snow just stopped.
a miracle.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle. The snow has stopped. What's that I see? Oh, the snow is coming back. Anyway, may your evening be free of snow, everybody. Bye-bye. I'm going to push the button. Roseanne's not here to tell me to push the button, but I can be self-disciplined enough to push the button. Matri is starting to give me a dirty look. Rojo's useless. She's on the floor completely in a ball. We lost Yvonne too. She's on the couch over there. No, there she is.
She's sneaky.
She was being sneaky. She was doing a little yoga nidra game.
I wasn't awake for a while, but
In and out, in and out. So, okay. Thanks again, everybody, for playing. Dewey Dewey, which is bye-bye in honor of the Dutchies. Alrighty. Remember, what we're ultimately looking for is where? It's in the silence after the Om.
Oh.
To be continued.